Hey friends, it's John. I was planning to do another episode today with my friend James, but that one needs to wait until we're together. What I felt led to share today is something raw. It's personal. It's from the road, literally. I just got back from a 4,000 mile round trip from Florence, Arizona to London, Ontario. And during that time, I felt so many things. Some beautiful, some really hard, and some I'm still processing. But what I know is this. If there's even one person listening who needs to hear what I'm about to say, then it's worth being this open. Because there's no point in doing a podcast about recovery if I'm not willing to be real.
Welcome to Pastors in Recovery, a podcast dedicated to ministry leaders and pastors navigating the challenges of their own hurts, hang-ups, and habits. Hosted by John Hammond, a grateful believer in Jesus Christ and a pastor on the road of recovery. This space is here to remind you that God's grace is bigger than any struggle. Each episode brings real stories of redemption, practical tools for healing, and encouragement rooted in Christ's promise of renewal. You don't have to walk this journey alone. Let's explore how God meets us in our brokenness and brings light to our darkest moments. Welcome to the conversation.
So the drive up was 3 full days in the car, over 2,000 miles one way, and it was rough, not just physically, but emotionally. I was in the car with my daughter and her husband, and our car was packed. We had a dog and 3 cats. My daughter and her husband, they cared deeply about animals, so much that he would just completely shut down at times because he was hurting so bad. Watching the cats cry in their crates, couldn't even function in those moments. And then my daughter, she hit her limit one day. Really, it was the first night. She got out of the car and just says, "I can't do this. I've been in the car all day and I can't get back in." Well, and then later we realized that she hadn't taken her meds that day. It was so overwhelming. I was trying to keep the peace, keep everyone safe, keep the car moving forward, but inside I felt powerless. Now, as a dad, you want to fix it all, but I couldn't. I could only be present. So we ended up staying in a town called Joplin, Missouri. That was after, I believe, the second night. And in Joplin, about 10 years ago, my son had been there to help with the relief effort after the big tornado. And it was kind of surreal to be there, but also that was cool. And we actually got to eat outside at a restaurant, and that's dog friendly. And they brought stuff out for the dog. And, it was kind of a nice, cool evening there. Got to see a memorial at the park and stuff like that. But finally, after the third day, we get to the border. This was tough. When we got to the Canadian border, we were detained. And it's not because of all the political stuff going on right now. It has nothing to do with that. I get it. The agents were just doing their job, but it was unnerving. You see, we were American citizens, but my daughter's husband is Canadian. And she's moving there to be with him. So we had tons of stuff on the roof of the car. They needed to check it all. While we were held up, my wife, Janine, had just arrived in London. She had taken a long bus ride to meet us there from Toronto, and she arrived late, around midnight. The stores were all closed where the bus dropped her off. It was closed there, and she had no ride. We had planned to get her a taxi, but because of the delay at the border, we couldn't make the phone call. There was not even any cell service inside there. So she ended up standing out in the cold, trying to figure out how to download the Uber app on her phone. I felt awful. I'm her husband. I'm supposed to be there, and I wasn't. Well, I want to talk about the spiritual drifting, feeling far from God. Now, you would think that this wouldn't happen, right? But, well, of course it happens. It happens to you. It happens to me. I started out the trip strong. I was reading my Bible every morning. I was praying. I was trying to stay connected to God. But as the days wore on, the pressure and the pace took over. We were moving furniture, finding things for their apartment, making Walmart and Costco runs, dealing with the pets, the people, and everything in between. And slowly, I started drifting. I wasn't rebelling. I just stopped feeling close. I found myself listening to more and more secular music just to cope, just to fill the silence. I wasn't journaling, wasn't worshiping, wasn't even thinking about creating music, which I usually love. So when I got home, I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel soft towards God when I walked back into my home 8 days later, 4,000 miles later. I didn't feel rebellious, but I felt hard, like the hardness of sin had crept in, not through one big failure, but through the exhaustion of survival mode. But God was still at work. God was still moving. You see, there was this moment when my daughter looked at Janine and I with tears in her eyes, and she said, I love you guys. The reason I do what I do, the reason I help people through my website, the reason I care about mental health is because you put that in me. That wrecked me. It was her 10-year anniversary at starting her website, and in that moment, she made it clear we had left a mark of love. And then her husband, he told us, I don't really have a dad. My mom has basically rejected me. You're my dad now, and Janine is my mom. Those aren't small words. Those are sacred words. And I realized God had been using us the whole time, even when we didn't feel anything. So I come home. It was hard. I was exhausted. And this morning, I walked into my daughter's old room. It was empty. The cats were gone. The dog wasn't there. And the reality of it all, it just hit me. She's really gone. It felt like grief, like loss. Now, even though I'm proud of her and I'm grateful she's starting a new chapter, my heart still hurt. But even in that moment, God reminded me, my other daughter and her husband and my first grandchild are moving in. This house won't stay empty. Life moves. Love continues. And while we were gone, something beautiful happened. Our kids stepped up. My youngest child, she cleaned the house. She worked on the kitchen, and she apologized for not doing more. I told her how proud I was because she was amazing. And then my son asked if the plants needed water. He took care of that. These are just the things that mean something to a dad. And then another daughter of ours, best friend who had lived with us, told us she was pregnant. She said, I wanted to tell you first because you're like my family. And we told her the truth. We love you like our own. We're here for you. Sometimes in life, it just feels like you just give out until there's nothing left of you. You know, all this has me thinking about something that happened in college. I was doing my ministry internship with a youth pastor. I was using an office at that church, and they asked me to give it up for someone else. I got upset. I felt entitled. And the youth pastor took me aside and said, John, you're probably one of the most selfish people I've ever met. That hit me hard. I didn't understand it then, but I see it. I see it now. God has used so much pain, church failures, fibromyalgia, recovery, adoption, fatherhood to chip away at that selfishness. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm also not who I used to be. And the biggest difference, I've learned that I'm powerless. I've learned that my life is unmanageable and that I can't fix it, but God can. Maybe this episode, it's not polished, maybe it's a little messy, but that's recovery. That's faith. You might feel like you're giving and no one sees it. God sees it. And sometimes the people you least expect will surprise you with love. Look, if you're tired, if you feel far from God, you're not alone. He's still working. He's still writing your story. And even when you feel like you have nothing left, He's not finished with you. I know, because I feel that right now. After 4,000 miles on the road and hearing all the thank yous and I love yous, it's worth it. Hey, pastors, thanks for letting me share this with you. I love you guys, and we're in this together.
But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness, in your weakness. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness, in your weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. I will boast in my weaknesses, so that Christ's power rest on me. His power will rest on me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness, in your weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. I will boast in my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. His power will rest on me. Jesus reminded me that His grace is enough, even when I'm worn out, feeling disconnected, or have nothing left to give. In fact, it's in those exact moments when I'm weakest that His strength shows up the clearest. So instead of hiding my struggles, I can be honest about them, because that's where His power rests. I will boast in my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. His power will rest on me. He says to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. He says to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Then
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Pastors in Recovery. If this podcast resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with your fellow pastors. Your support helps spread the message of healing and restoration. Don't miss out on upcoming interviews with pastors and meaningful discussions on real-life struggles and victories in ministry. If you've missed any past episodes, we encourage you to go back and listen. You can support this podcast financially by unlocking exclusive content and being part of this mission by becoming a supporter for just $2 a month. Sign up here at tinyurl.com/support pastors. Again, tinyurl.com/support pastors. Remember, brokenness is where God wants to meet us the most, and that's where the journey of healing begins. Keep pressing forward and know that you're not alone. See you in the next episode.